joining us on Pandas Playing Cello
Festival?
Festival. Well, I was trying to get that iron butterfly in there. Pandas and butterflies playing
Playing
cello
cellos with butterflies.
with butterflies. There you
Yes.
go. Absolutely.
I am so honored to be here. I don't know why I have been bestowed this honor, but I am so
Well,
happy.
we know why.
We're the ones being bestowed the honor.
No,
Absolutely.
I almost am blushing because I love you both so much.
Aw,
And
we
this
love you
is such an
too.
honor to be here with you.
Thanks for being here.
No.
Yes, yes.
Your whole I think I've listened to every season now, and
Well, you're doing better than me. I mean, I try to
Yeah.
listen to as many as I can, but
it's what you're doing with Iron Butterfly and now with Planeteers and with what's the other one?
So Women in the Arena.
Women
in
I'm
the
actually wearing
You're
the
wearing the
t-shirt.
shirt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Women in the Arena. They're fantastic. All of the, Women in the Arena with Sarah Scully, she's amazing. I mean, the stories that she's having told is amazing. And Beth Bannerman, who will be Planeteers, is also fantastic. I can't wait for everyone to meet her. Virtually, obviously, but yeah.
And is it okay I know you're both in the documentary. Is it okay to ask about the documentary?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it okay for us to talk about it?
sure.
when
I
you're
mean,
ready?
it's really your
Yeah.
Your
It
baby.
is almost there.
oh wow.
We went 2 weeks ago down to Florida
Oh,
with
my.
our production company, and we are going back in another 2 weeks. And we should have frame lock by the end of May, which means we'll pretty
It's a
much
very
have the
sexy
movie.
term.
Yeah.
frame
I
lock.
know it's in the
Now,
biz.
the
in the
documentary,
biz.
by the way, is the story of a bunch of contemporary women who
Mhm.
had careers in the intelligence community.
Yep.
It's
I
all
think-
people who had careers?
Yeah, I was just trying to think.
Yeah.
So that's a very key term there,
Yeah.
Carmen. Yes. The one, so some of them, yes, still have careers. Up until recently, some of them still were in government,
Mhm.
but a turn kind of shifted, and so there's no longer anyone currently serving.
Mhm.
But it is a beautiful, someone asked me about it this weekend, and I realized the way to describe it is it is like a love story to
Mm.
to women, really. And it shows the power of women and what they can do, in the world. It's really like the butterfly effect, and there are different ways you can make change in the world, and you can have influence in the world, and it can be very small or it could be very large.
That's right.
And that's what this movie will show.
And all sentient beings have influence in the world. So
Absolutely.
we're not trying to suggest that there's something better about women's influence in the world, but we do want to suggest that every sentient category
Absolutely.
has a distinctive influence in the world. That's kind of what diversity means. And when we deprive ourselves of any category
Right.
of that sentience, of that distinctive sentience, we're just poorer for it. So, for example, take my plant Ben.
I love
I
Ben.
love Ben.
The
I
first
love
time
Ben.
Ben's ever been in a video. Ben is 46 years old.
Oh my, he's the same age as me.
Oh my God.
I swear.
No wonder Ben looks like
I love
Ben,
Ben.
and you were like
And
twins.
Ben, needs some attention, and I will call upon you and perhaps Brooks at some point this summer
Yeah.
to make him happier. Although the Comanche
Yeah,
who live with him currently.
I'm happy to help
Or
because
thrive.
I am.
But anyway, he's so big that he's, we can't
gosh.
really repot him because then we would never get him back in the
Yeah, he
house.
goes out of frame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I talked to Ben, and I know that Ben has some type of sentience.
Yeah.
In fact, more and more research shows that
Yeah.
Yeah.
all sorts of creatures that we didn't think had sentience have it,
it
of
makes
course.
you ask what sentience is, and
Mhm.
also the whole conversation about women and men, and like, we're not saying women are better, we're saying women have something that's different and or distinctive. I think it's really, speaking of the real power of diversity,
Mhm.
that it's really important to point out that men and women are generally different.
And that's
Mhm.
okay. I think that's
It's not
the
only
point.
okay, it's
That's
the,
okay.
it's awesome.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it's
Right.
necessary. You
Yeah.
need both. And we need both in all sorts of activities, for everything from running the world to making babies. I mean, like, you need
Yeah, you
both.
need both, that's right.
And so an appreciation of both is not really backwards moving, it's forward moving.
Oh, I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole, there's so much that you could say about this, not to
Yes.
dominate this discussion with this topic, but um, people for a while unwisely, I think, it resisted the idea that the sexes are different.
Yes.
And it was politically incorrect to argue that the sexes are different.
Yeah, right.
It sort of still is.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
as a
so.
researcher doing, when I would find sex differences, I'd say, oh, isn't it interesting? Men do this thing and women do this thing. I don't want to hear it. Don't talk about that in your talk. And of course I would. But there was sort of a like, don't say that. And
Right.
then even when I was pregnant and I noticed I'm living through a fog of, like, my thinking is very spotty. Like, sometimes I'm really sharp and sometimes I'm like swimming in a fog and I have no idea.
Mhm.
And this one woman, academic, came up to me and she said, please don't say those things out loud.
Oh my gosh, why not?
Well, because it shows that women can't be like men when they're carrying babies. They're different. I'm like, but if you look at that, if you look at the endocrinology of the situation, when women are in a fog, their endocrinological profile is more like men are always, by the way.
By the way, by the way, by the way.
So there's this other piece to it.
It's not like how men are is the standard that we should all strive to meet,
Right.
nor how women are is the standard we
Right.
should all strive to
Right.
meet. That misses the point completely.
Right. And I feel like coming back to the film, I've only seen the teaser,
Mhm.
but from the teaser, I get the impression that the point is everyone's bringing their nature, everyone's bringing who they are.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of the things you say in the teaser, Carmen, is that if you don't bring who you are, then there's a U-shaped hole.
Yeah.
That's right.
In that, whatever it is, and frankly, I think it's beyond the intelligence community. I think it's any community that's about
100%.
service.
This
This
is
applies to everybody.
yes. And you don't the movie has nothing to do. It has, I mean, no offense to men, but it has nothing to do with men. It has to do with just being a human, and we're telling it through these women's stories. But
What happened to your popcorn bowl?
Okay, so Carmen,
So-
I'm just gonna let the audience know.
Well, no, absolutely.
Oh.
We want to be transparent about this.
did you put your popcorn bowl?
I put my popcorn bowl away because Carmen has this idea that we should be serving ourselves with this silver spoon.
It's
from
not a
this
silver spoon.
elegant silver colored spoon from this very elegant popcorn bowl. And my deal with popcorn is it's like a sacred
Communal?
ritual. It's not like communal. It's like I will shove my face with it.
Well,
When I
there is
took my
nothing better to shove your face with than popcorn.
Carmen paused. She wanted to make sure that was going to be appropriate.
Well, that I had the right preposition.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right, yes.
But so I took my bowl away because I decided it would get in the way of a conversation.
Well,
'cause-
okay, well, if you want, you can use this as your bowl.
well, that was my first thought. I was like, oh, there's popcorn for me.
So as usual, Megan, Julia, we have wandered into the conversation without properly introducing.
Oh yeah, we do.
We do, that's our
Our
favorite thing.
It's like
So
our trademark.
it's Megan Jaffer.
Mhm.
And I've known Megan for maybe 15 years.
Yep.
Would that be
I think
right?
that's about right. Yep.
And we
For me,
first
it's only like 2 years, I think, 2 or 3 years.
Yep. I think that's right.
met when she was, well, it's complicated on how we first met, but our first conversations were about how she was trying to enter one of the intelligence community 3-letter agencies and why that was difficult. And I was trying to help her. And I was so intrigued by your background.
Mm.
And I loved what you had worked on.
Mhm.
That you had lived in South Korea and
Mhm.
you had worked on an issue, you'd written a paper on it,
Mhm.
which I was like, oh my God, this is exactly the kind of the stuff that the intelligence community needs to understand much better.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of people who work in the intelligence community have this great man theory of international relations, that it's all about the men in power and what they decide to do. And I gotta tell you, it's hard sometimes to argue against that. But I will tell you that in my time in the intelligence community, when there were great discontinuities, it was often because of things that were below the surface that we weren't paying attention to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was your sort of work?
So I'll give you the background story first because I
Okay.
think it's kind of cool. So I lived in Korea for 5 years. I went to graduate school in South Korea, and I didn't get in. I didn't know I was going to go to graduate school. I went there for a year to study Korean, and I worked at a college in Gwangju, Korea, which is 3 hours south of Seoul. And in that town, I was the only foreigner. And I was able to travel throughout Korea. And I was often mistaken for a Russian person. I was often asked if I was a Russia Sadamimnika, which means, are you Russian? And in the beginning, I didn't know what that implied. I just thought they were guessing on my nationality.
Yes.
So I would get in a taxi or I would be on the street. I've even had men kind of grab me and say, are you Russian?
Like
Um,
hostily or just sort of?
Sometimes, yeah. Or they would call me Natasha, which I guess is a common name, Russian common name. And I had no idea what that meant. So when I ended up loving Korea, ended up staying, ended up applying to graduate school there, got in, and I wrote my thesis on prostitution in Korea.
Oh, wow.
And initially, my interest was that like of so I later found out that there was a lot of Russian women immigrants that came sometimes forced or tricked to
Right.
come to Korea, and then their passports were taken to work in the entertainment industry. That's what they were
They
told.
were being trafficked.
They were being
There's
trafficked.
way more of that, I think, in the world.
I think people don't realize, even
Yeah,
here.
even here.
Yeah,
And
even in the entertainment industry in LA.
oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
even in like Colorado, you
Yeah.
don't really
They
realize
make really good popcorn.
you make
Yes, it's
delicious
phenomenal.
popcorn.
That's why I had to get rid of the bowl.
I know, I had so much before we even started.
I'm sorry.
So no, it's okay. So I did some research, did some digging, and realized that it was really only centralized in the port cities of Korea. So like Busan, where there were a lot of Russian Navy men. And so there were a lot of Russian sex workers that worked there. So there wasn't a whole lot to write about because I thought it was more widespread than it really was. And then I really focused on the sex industry in Korea specifically because is, it's, they try very much for it not to be out in the open, but it very much is. There's a hierarchy in the sex work in Korea from, they have red light districts or used to that you could go to. Then they like a step above would be women who I forget what the Korean term was, but they delivered coffee to men at different
Like comfort workers. or
comfort,
something.
yeah, and they would provide services other than coffee. Then a step above that would be you would go to a noraebang, which is a karaoke place, and there would be women that would entertain you there, and you had the option of bringing home. And then they would just,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
would
And
graduate.
there are, some professional,
Professional, like
high paid
high
escort
paid, yes,
service,
yes.
right?
And so I ended up spending 2 years um, in researching that and looking at that and some of the shocking things that just surprised me and a lot of people asked me, I had this conversation recently, like why I didn't continue down that work later on in life.
Mm.
And I realized after I had finished school, and when I actually finished, that was my dissertation, that it really, a lot of people, you know, when you are in these trauma type of careers, like if you are a police officer or you work as a doctor in an ER, they say you have to decompartmentalize like what's
Mhm.
happening, and I could not do that.
Mhm.
I felt it. I
Mhm.
could feel that I was changing the way I was thinking, the way I was
Mm.
acting, and I knew at that point that I couldn't continue on, you know, working in a career like that where I was, you know, studying, even if I was studying it or
In
working
some
at a
ways, it's kind of a
nonprofit.
form of PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of maybe once removed, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always knew that, you know, I just couldn't, that was just something that it hit me too hard.
Yeah.
And so that was what I talked to you about.
Mm.
So I'm just asking because I'm trying to understand.
Sure.
You were in a situation where what you were studying was causing you trauma, so you thought you wanted to go into the intelligence community?
So,
Well put, Julia. Well put.
I'm just trying to.
that was always the goal. It wasn't, my goal wasn't, I was just interested in that topic, and that's the topic that I wrote about. I also focused on North Korean human rights. So I would say from the age of like 18 or 19, maybe around there, I knew I wanted to go into the intelligence community. I found a topic that really interested me. I went down that path. People assumed that I was going to continue down that path, and I didn't. That was just something I wanted to study.
People, sorry.
No, I'm done. Yeah.
It didn't mean that to be so abrupt, but I, get asked by kids how to prepare for a career in the intelligence community, and I didn't do this. I took more sort of a general international relations kind of degree, which I don't really recommend. But I think what's really good is to develop expertise on something.
Yeah.
It could be history, it could be a science, it could be a sociology, and it could be really any topic. One of my good friends, colleagues, former colleagues, her PhD was in medieval history.
Oh, whoa.
Wow,
Yeah,
interesting.
so because by knowing something deeply,
Mhm.
you stand a good chance of developing sophisticated analytic skills,
Right.
which I still don't think we really understand how to teach.
No,
But
because we
yeah.
don't understand what they actually
I
are.
guess we don't quite understand what they are. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, thanks for sharing that
Yeah.
story.
I never talk about that. And it's so funny because, yeah, like Carmen said, the way we met was, it's a longer story, but it's actually very special to me. But that second conversation was at a breakfast. And I remember leaving thinking, I know she wanted to, I went in to talk to her about a career in the intelligence community. And I know she was trying to help me, but we talked a lot about my Korea experience and just me as a person. And then it hit me like later that day, I'm like, oh, she knew how to really get in there.
I mean, I
in a good way,
innocent. I'm just very curious about people.
But no one had ever asked me
But that's also
questions like that.
Well, see, that's the thing. So actually, Carmen, I know that it is true that you're genuinely curious about people, but that is also the right way to recruit people to the intelligence.
It's a gift. It's a gift. Yes,
Right?
you have a gift.
It is both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So then you did do some work for companies in the national security space. Is that fair?
Oh yeah.
And then Megan and I both were involved in setting up informal mentoring club.
Yeah, I would say it was one of the first women's. I would say, or it was not organized and unfunded like women's organizations.
Right.
for the women in national security space.
This is AWIC?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it was the first, there were women's organizations within the institutions and the three-letter agencies. But there wasn't one that kind of gathered all of the women across the intelligence community that really tried to grab everyone and say, look,
Yeah. People are having similar experiences.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's now try to lift each other up and bring each other through our careers. And it wasn't always just about the careers too. I always said this is about getting to know one another,
Right.
and yes, we are trying to help each other and bring each other along throughout our careers, but now I know, oh, you live in Reston, I'm going to move to Reston. Do you have a doctor I could go to? We created bonds.
Right.
So
And this actually reminds me, I'm sure I said this at some point in our meetings, but this British official, very senior, but I won't mention his name, because he's that senior, he was that senior. He came to me when I was serving in London, came to me at a party one day, and he was a good guy. I mean, smart and generous, and Hillary Clinton, this must have been in the early 90s. But already I think she was projecting as a potentially powerful political figure. And so he said to me, do you know why women are never he thought, I think it'll be very hard for women to really gain powerful positions. And at that time, Margaret Thatcher was the prime minister. So but I think Margaret Thatcher was sui generis. She had her own category. Anyway, he said to me, the reason why is that they can't go to the men's room. And his implication was that, there's all this stuff that goes on, deals are cut, conversations occur that only occur when men are with themselves. And that the fact that women aren't privy to those conversations is already a deficit that they have to overcome. And that's probably, well, I'm sure it's true, but I remember thinking at the time that AWIC was kind of a way for us to create our own.
I say a good old girls club, just
good
like
old
the
girls
good old
club.
boys club.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing women in the intelligence community. We haven't explained it. And then I guess right when the pandemic started or before the pandemic, when did you begin the Iron Butterfly podcast?
So it was August or September in the pandemic.
Okay.
And
2020.
Yeah. So, and I have to give full credit to Katie Nockwin Hopkins for that idea, because what happened was we had done AWIC for about 5 years at that point, 5 or 6 years. And I was leading kind of the committee, and I was ready to step aside just to, do other endeavors.
Right.
And Katie took that over. And she was brilliant, but unfortunately she took it over right when COVID started. And we were doing everything in person. We did workshops, we did keynotes, we did
Ask Me Anything,
which that's great, happy hours. And what Katie ended up doing was switching the Ask Me Anythings, which were super popular, which everyone does. But the reason why AWICs were popular was because we were really focused on the women, not just their career. We could ask, like Carmen would come on and they could ask her anything. They could ask her what it's like to, have Ben, right? Or they could talk to her about, the intelligence community. So Katie was working at DIA at the time, Defense Intelligence Agency, for those out there. And we were all at home. She was at home too. And they told her, you should be listening to podcasts and doing all this other stuff. And we all know that there are other podcasts out there that are national security based, but they're very topical, right? So they're talking about Russia and Ukraine or Israel and Hamas, like the topics of the day, but none of them were focused on the people.
Right.
So she came to me and said, I think I want to do a podcast. And I said, oh, well, my husband did one and he was mentored. Why don't you go talk to him and his team? They could mentor you and then, you could do it. So 2 months go by, she comes back and she says, so I'm going to do it. I want to do it. And I want you to host it. And I looked at her and I was like, no, I just said no. I said, I'm trying to do other stuff. And she goes, I can't do it because I'm in government and people know
That's
you
right.
because of AWIC. And she wore me down. Like she'll tell you the same thing. So I said, okay, let's do this. We did it and we started with our first season, which was very we start off bold with like 15 episodes, which is insane to think.
Yeah, you don't have to do that many.
Oh, we
Yeah.
do definitely don't. We do 8 now.
Yeah.
And we started with, I like to say, our friends and family. And
Right.
so our very first guest was Carmen. And we chose Carmen because Carmen was my mentor and I felt very safe with Carmen. I felt like I was already nervous and I had no idea what I was doing. And I knew that you would put me at ease and I wouldn't feel like I had to fight. I felt like it would be comfortable. And off we went.
Yeah.
Well, to Carmen's credit, I mean, Carmen, you never toot your own horn, or you get uncomfortable tooting your own horn. But
Well,
when
we're back to that place of, well, I need to be humble. It's
Well,
like,
I knew you would say that,
not
right?
tooting your own horn is an exercise in ego. There's no way
Right.
to avoid that. So I would just rather the topic not come up.
Okay, well,
Which is
I'm bringing it up right now. And I'm bringing it up
I love
just
it.
to say so I just got to know you starting in April of 2020. So then in the fall of 2020, after they had several episodes, she says, oh, there's this new thing, Iron Butterfly. And then she sends me an episode of someone else.
Oh.
And then I discovered that they did one. Carmen, they did one on YouTube. Oh yeah, well they did do that.
That's exactly what she would have said.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Oh yeah, well they did.
That's true also. But my sense is that the reason why it was so pleasing to me to hear it was because every other podcast, and almost true now, that every podcast is about ideas or we're supposed to pretend that it isn't special or different or weird culturally that there are women in the intelligence community.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to just treat them like men and listen to what they're doing and pretend that there's no issue or difference. And that's just not true. And so what you were saying is there is a difference. We have different experiences. We're going to talk about it. And it just felt so much more real and incredibly healing and engaging.
Right.
Well, we wanted to put a face to a faceless organizations. And
Well, that's the part that I like about it a lot, is sort of the humanizing of, the intelligence community, which does it to itself. I mean, they love to be thought of as, dangerous and mysterious, and you don't want to meet us in a back alley. And
We'll kick your ass with our analytics.
yeah. And
Oh my gosh.
mostly it's not true. And they're just and then they get upset when that image leads like the average American not to trust the intelligence community.
What did you think would happen?
And people, to talk about the deep state, and
you kind of can't have both.
You can't have both.
You can't have both, right?
I think the beauty of telling stories, and it's not just the stories we're telling, but when you tell anyone's story, and I can't take credit for this saying because it was actually Jennifer Eubank, I think, who said this. She said, everybody's story is extraordinary and ordinary at the same time.
Exactly.
And it's so true. Every single person who comes on, they say, my story's not that interesting. I saw some of the people you've had on and they are so extraordinary. And every time they're just as extraordinary, but in a different way.
That's right.
And it's the best part. I never thought, I knew I loved stories, but I never knew that I would love this so much. I love sitting down and hearing these women's stories. and learning. They're all fascinating. They've all had different lives, different experience, different ways they were brought up, different, um, and it makes them the unique person that they are.
Yeah, that, well, and it would be, I think, to the betterment of all sentient beings if we focused on these individual stories rather than attaching to them or seeing them through the filters of these categories
Labels,
that
yeah.
and
Gender
labels
and race
that
and
don't
politics,
don't
yeah.
really
Mhm.
fit
Mhm.
anybody that well.
That's
No,
right.
that's right. That's right. I always thought I was always jealous because I didn't have my career wasn't linear, I guess you would say, where you graduate and you go to this job and it brings you to this and you kind of go this straight line till you get where you want to be. I was all over the map like this. And I always thought, my husband was one that had a linear path.
Yes.
And I used to be jealous of that because I thought, oh my gosh, he's so happy and he just took those steps and it was so easy. And you know what? It was Katie one day who said, why do you want to be put in a box?
Yeah.
Those are the people that are put in. She said for herself, I have always been put in a box. I'm an analyst and that's what I am. But you're not in that box and you should embrace that. And
Right.
ever since then, I feel I'm so lucky
Yeah.
that I've had the life I've had, the experiences I've
great.
had. And so I encourage people to feel, look at it that way.
All right. No, well, you've clearly resisted any straight and narrow path. I mean, and
Well, it's even linear, like even
you've
if it
had,
was
I mean,
wide,
there's so
yeah.
many
Yeah.
dimensions to your personality and your life experience. So I don't know if you want to talk about this, and if you don't, we'll just edit this out.
Sure.
But I mean, the fact that you converted
Mm-hmm.
to a not particularly well-known
Mm-hmm.
sect, or
Yep.
what would you call it?
I guess like a sect of Shia Islam.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, not something I grew up Catholic. I was very Catholic. I mean, I was confirmed, I was baptized, I went to a Catholic university. We went to church every Sunday. We knew our priest very well, Father Tapper. And I knew I was a person of faith.
Yes.
I knew I was spiritual. I think you know that very much. And I met my husband, and he was a Shia Ismaili, and I had no idea what that was. And he,
But it sounds very positive with the smiling part.
yeah, well, it is. It is very positive. And
I just mean subconsciously.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, just because of the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he shared with me his faith, and then as if anyone knows my husband, they know he's very opinionated man, and I knew that if I was going to learn more, I wanted to learn it outside of him because I knew he would have very strong feelings of what.
That's so wise.
Yeah, he had
That
very
was so
strong
wise.
opinions on what his beliefs were in his faith, and his dad ended up his dad has since passed, but was like the best way to describe it was kind of like a lay preacher in his faith. And so I would talk to his dad and I would ask him questions like, okay, well, because in the Shia Smiley faith, oh, thanks. Yeah, tap me up. If you are not baptized in the faith, you actually can't perform the prayers. It's not like a church where anyone could go in and
But women
go.
can perform the prayers.
Oh, no,
In
anyone
general.
in the faith can. Men and women pray together, men and women lead the prayers together, but I just mean like a non-Ismaili can't come and pray. And so I had lots of questions about that. Like, what does that mean? And tell me about this. And his dad was so awesome. And there was like no judgment and there was no pressure. And I just learned a lot about it. And then my husband had a child when I met him. And I started going with my now son to the like equivalent to Sunday school with him, just because I wanted to learn more and I wanted to learn from the beginning like a kid would learn.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, long story short, I realized that that was, it was a faith and a community. Really, the community is so wonderful. And I love being a part. I love being a Smiley. I love being a part of the community. I love what it stands for, what we believe in. And so, yeah, I did go through
Yes.
the process. It was long, but it was awesome. I actually miss it. I miss having the conversations and, you know,
Oh, you mean
Oh,
the
you missed
conversion
the
process?
conversion
Yeah,
process.
right.
Yeah, every Saturday I would go. I had my own kind of one-on-one with my teacher, and his name was Nadeem. His name is Nadeem. He's still living, and he was awesome. I mean, I had such a wonderful experience, and we had awesome discussions about religion and philosophy and life.
Well, I'm not, it's hard for me to describe myself. And I believe in mystery. I believe our existence is quite mysterious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated and I think pretty knowledgeable about a lot of religious traditions.
Mhm.
And one thing I do know is that there are a lot of smaller, in adherence religious traditions that are were and or are very wise. They
Yeah.
have a lot of wisdom to offer,
Right.
Yeah.
but they sort of been
Usurped.
overwhelmed
Yeah.
by kind of
The
this sort of
larger.
industrial religious complex, which does exist, I think.
But it'll go through phases, right?
That's right.
Because I just can't get over this recent article I heard, essay by Tyson Yunkaporta, who's talking about how there's of course he's a Aboriginal. I
Mhm.
think I told you about him, right? Yeah, who wrote Sand Talk, right? And now he writes other things, but he mostly speaks them, and it was a spoken essay. And one of the things he was saying is that yes, of course, there's times of violence and autocracy and plutocracy, and the hordes of what did he call it? People who can do sorcery. Anyone can do sorcery, but only people who can love can actually do magic.
Oh, wow.
This kind of,
That's nice.
which I
I
thought
love that.
reminds me of this, is that these little groups, they stick together, and then when the time is right, they're like a seed
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
blossoms.
That's lovely.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's how I really feel about our community. It's I've never seen, I mean, they just are so tight knit in the best way, like not an exclusionary way, even though it sounded like that when I said like non-Smileys can't pray, but I mean just they're always there for one another no matter what. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's
So,
all love, like you
yeah.
said, it's
Yeah.
all love.
Well, then not being able to pray if you're not a part of a sect thing is similar to Zen monks who, when they're not at a certain level, they can't do certain meditation.
Well, it's a
I mean,
historical thing, just so everybody understands. Historically, Ismailis were persecuted because they were not like other
Right.
Muslims. And so it was actually a safety mechanism and still is in certain parts of the world because they're considered, I hate to use this word, but it's the truth, like they're considered kind of the heretics.
Right.
And so they had these closed, so we go to a Jamaat khana, not a mosque, and a Jamaat khana means a prayer gathering. And that's what they would do with each other because other people, they could be harmed if they knew they were praying in a different way or so on and so forth. So that's the history behind it. People ask me all the time, like, isn't that kind of crazy? And I said, I don't think it's going to be like that forever. It was just a historical, kind of,
Right.
it was brought over historically.
I personally think it's kind of nice. It's like there's a lineage.
Yeah.
It's like the lineage traditions. And it's like actually learning how to pray means that you can actually access whatever they're accessing in the same kind of way. And that's their talent and gift and and spirit of that group.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
So, we only have, I think,
Few
a
minutes.
few more minutes.
What,
and
really?
Yeah, really. And I thought we could say whatever we want to say about the current circumstances. And what I want to say to connect it to this conversation that we've just been having,
Mhm.
and it's not a thought that just entered my mind. I've been having this thought for a while. I feel sad for people who go through life obsessing about the acquisition of stuff, symbols, status in the world that in the end, I myself am persuaded, I can't prove it, but I'm persuaded that it's kind of meaningless.
Mhm.
And I mean that for all sides. I mean that, and I mean that for like the people that are like trying to get rich or, are judging themselves, their self-worth by how much stuff they have. Although God knows I have a lot of stuff. But I love it all.
It brings you joy.
It brings me joy.
But it doesn't have anything to do with their self-worth.
No, not at all.
Yes, that's the key.
yeah.
That's the key.
And I also am, sad for the people who go, well, the only way we're going to be able to turn things around is to get violent. And I'm like, oh, I just don't think that can be the answer either. But then there's, the other hand where I go, well, clearly when things go rotten, there are moments when there could have been an intervention that
Mhm.
maybe could have stopped it from getting more rotten, but the people who would have had to intervene wisely were the kind of people who were not prone to that kind of intervention. That would be like me, I would be like, I don't know, I'm just not sure enough to take away someone else's dignity based on what I believe to be true.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. I
I
guess
don't, yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
hear what you have to say before I respond.
you're already in your analytic stance. My sense, I guess, sort of springboarding off that, is that it's about love. It is this idea that what you are acting from matters. So we've lived in this world where people's behavior is judged. Anything that you can measure from the outside is considered the thing that is important. But in fact, what we as humans, regardless of culture, actually consider important actually is the intention.
Mm-hmm.
We wonder about that, even our legal system around murders. Oh, did they intend to do this or did it just happen? Right. So intention matters. And if something is done with the intention of love, even if it messes everything up, it has a different effect on the space-time continuum than if something is not done with love. The same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it messes everything up. Right? And so it seems to me not enough attention is being paid to intention that is used to do things and how that actually makes a difference.
But love of what? Let me explain that. I
Okay.
mean,
Not
I
love
think
of anything.
that's worthwhile. But I think everybody in our social drama will say that they're acting out of love. You may, dissect that and go,
yeah.
not true. But I think they will all try to claim that higher ground.
Yeah, but that is not what I'm saying matters. That's more behavior, whatever someone says about what they're doing. What I'm saying is that there's an essential natural force in the universe called universal love. That is a real, like a natural force, like electricity. And either you are tapping into it to do whatever it is you believe needs to be done, or you're not. And you can have an opinion and talk about whether you are or aren't, but that actually doesn't matter. Like there's an actual reality where the universe works out differently if you are tapping into that and do the very same thing than if you're not tapping into that. So I think that needs to be understood better.
Okay, you get the last word.
Oh my gosh, this is tough because I will not be as eloquent as you both.
And
I
that'll be good. Even if that's true, although I'm not, I will
skeptical.
debate that point. Yes.
So I would say that I think it is very clear when someone is acting out of kind of a power mindset and a person who's acting out of a love mindset. Even if ultimately that love gets them power, I think if you are just acting out of power, it looks very different than this.
Mhm.
And I don't think that if you're acting in this way, in the love way, and you feel like you're asserting your thoughts or your feelings or your opinions, if you are acting out of love, I don't think if you do any of those things that you're taking dignity away from someone else that is
Good point.
that is I don't think
Thinks differently.
Thinks differently. I don't think that's the case. So that's how I feel.
Amen.
I don't know if that's the end.
Amen.
Let's do a
Amen.
toast to the future of the world.
Oh, yes.
To the future of sentience.
Yes.
And I think rocks probably have some too, by the way.
I'm pretty much a panpsychist, so I'm pretty sure that this coaster is smarter than we are.
I have no idea what panpsychist means.
But it sounds good. But I treat almost everything like it has a soul.
You're a panpsychist.
So
Yeah.
I feel that way too. Sometimes I feel guilty, like even when I'm like, oh, I gotta throw this away. And, I get all
That has been with me for 10 or
Yeah.
and I don't even want to think about it.
I got to talk to it and say, I'm going to put you in the garbage to go to your next life.
Yes.
And it's been really wonderful you serving me. I swear.
I do similar things.
Yeah.
I do similar things.
Oh well.
Thank you both
Well,
so
thank you
much.
so much for Panda-ing with us.
Panda-ing, I love it.
Yeah,
Yes.
pandaing with your butterfly self.
Yes.
It was-
yes.
Thank you both.
All right.
Love you both.
Oh, we love you.